It's time to cut the shit, and it's time to get rid of this narrative that Isreal Adesanya was the inexperienced fighter when he fought Alex Pereira, and that, it was just a rookie mistake, and that was just a young Izzy making a stupid mistake and overextending and becoming overzealous. Bullshit. Isreal Adesanya wasn't the inexperienced fighter. He was actually the kickboxing veteran of the two when he fought Alex Pereira, and I'm going to completely destroy that narrative. Going into this fight for UFC 281, Isreal Adesanya versus Alex Pereira, everyone is saying it was a young Izzy, an inexperienced Izzy. That was a young Izzy, bro. Classic rookie mistake. We have guys like Dan Hardy and the entirety of the MMA media spouting this bullshit. And I just think it's so foolish, and it doesn't take more than a quick Google search to figure out that actually Alex Pereira has probably improved way more since Isreal Adesanya. So I'm going to show you guys their experience in kickboxing leading up to the first fight, leading up to the second fight, and then I'm going to show you who's improved more. Namely, I'm going to show you their experience in striking after that fight. So let's just get into it. Alex Pereira was actually the inexperienced one going into their first kickboxing fight, not Isreal Adesanya. Again, I don't know where this narrative comes from. I think it's Isreal himself, Adesanya himself, who actually started spreading this narrative, probably to cope with the fact that he was flatline KO'd, and that could maybe be embarrassing, right? If you're a striker and you call yourself the style bender and, the best striker on earth, perhaps, it may be embarrassing to get knocked out. So, pro kickboxing Muay Thai experience before their first fight. That's what we're going to look at. Isreal Adesanya, before the first fight with Alex Pereira, had 21 professional kickboxing fights. Now, we're not talking amateur. We're just talking professional fights. Isreal Adesanya with 21 pro fights going into that. All right. So Alex Pereira, on the other hand, had 5 professional fights. All right. So we're not even talking the same ballpark. Isreal Adesanya has more than 3 times the amount of Alex Pereira when it comes to his amount of fights. I mean, it's crazy how people can even get away with saying it was just a young Izzy, he was immature back then. Actually, he was kind of the veteran, if we're going to really be honest about this. And now we're also going to look at their experience going into the second fight. Which fighter has racked up more experience? Well, it's not looking too different for Alex Pereira, but since his fight with Alex Pereira, since his first fight with him, and now we're going to look at their second fight, right? So Isreal Adesanya, after the first fight with Alex Pereira, got another 10 fights in, all right? He loses to Alex Pereira. It's a close fight. He fights another 10 times. 31 professional fights, actually 9 times, including that fight with Pereira, right? So that's 10 fights until the second one. Alex Pereira, since that Izzy fight, he only had one more kickboxing fight, and he still comes in on 10 days notice, coming off of an injury, right? A replacement fighter, and he knocks Isreal Adesanya out and still pales in comparison to the amount of experience that Adesanya had. We're still looking at a noob. Adesanya got 10 fucking fights, and this is all in the span of like a year and a half, which is crazy. And he still manages to knock him out on short notice. And, I'll just throw this in there. The guy was an alcoholic. You're not only losing to someone who has way less experience, but you're also losing to a guy whose life is kind of in shambles. Not only was he injured and drowning out his sorrows with alcohol, but his life was kind of in shambles. I mean, let's be real. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear now that Adesanya was the much more experienced, advanced striker when both of those guys fought, and he still got knocked out. And yes, he did well in both fights, but not well enough to not get KO'd. And that's, if that's not a statement, I don't know what is. So we're going to look at what happened after that. I want to know who's improved more since those fights. And a lot of people are saying, well, that's a young Izzy. He's improved tons, and he's now going to come back and he's going to show us that we all must have forgot.
Hey, y'all must have forgot. Y'all must have forgot.
Y'all must have forgot. No, I actually haven't forgot, because I've been following Isreal Adesanya's entire MMA career. And guess what, guys? Isreal Adesanya quit kickboxing after his KO loss to Alex Pereira. I'm now on the right-hand side of your screen, and we're going to look at this. Alex Pereira, we see him right here. He loses to Alex Pereira by KO and immediately transitions into MMA. Never fights in kickboxing again. I want to know who's improved more when it comes to striking, and it doesn't really make sense that you would improve at kickboxing when you're no longer dedicating all of your time to it, right? When you're no longer training at the highest level in the realm of kickboxing, right? Because when you transition to MMA, you have a lot of grappling to cover up. You have a lot of ground to cover when it comes to that grappling, the takedown defense, and you name it. There's a lot of work to be done. You cannot stay at that level when it comes to pure striking. Let's be honest. I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. I don't really see Izzy shooting for Eminari rolls and, blast double-legging Alex Pereira. I just don't think it would make sense for him to do so. Again, we're going to talk about who's improved the most. It would make sense that the guy who continued to fight at the highest level in a striking-based sport would still be the better striker. Alex Pereira, since they fought, 11 kickboxing fights. Now, Alex Pereira hasn't been as active throughout his career as Isreal Adesanya, but 11 pro kickboxing fights after, what was it before he fought Adesanya for the first time? It was 5, and then the second fight going into it, he had 7. So now he has 11 more. I think he's improved more than Adesanya. I mean, if he was able to knock him out in that second fight, and that was when he was a noob, who was an alcoholic, whose life was in shambles. I mean, you go on to become a 2-weight division glory kickboxing champion now and a top 5 pound-for-pound kickboxer in the world. Come on. I think the answer is clear. So here we are again looking at Alex Pereira's resume. So he beats Isreal Adesanya in kickboxing by KO. And then he goes on quite a hot streak, right? He wins one, gets a nice win over Burim Rama, and then loses one. But then he goes on an absolute tear, beating Simon Marcus twice, by the way. Simon Marcus defeated Isreal Adesanya right before his second match with Alex Pereira. So he beat Simon Marcus twice, and then he destroys Jason Wilness to avenge his loss to Jason Wilness and becomes an absolute monster facing the best kickboxers on earth. And at this time, while Alex Pereira is sharpening his tools and really growing into a dominant kickboxing champion, Isreal Adesanya is kind of plateauing, if anything, when it comes to the striking, becoming an MMA champion. I just don't think it's possible for you, again, to be at that high level of kickboxing when you're doing MMA. If you've watched his past couple fights, they're getting closer. And they're getting closer with guys that you would think have no business striking with him, like a Jared Cannonier. I mean, hell, even Marvin Vettori was landing some good combinations on him. And now you're getting outstruck by Robert Whittaker. And Robert Whittaker, don't get me wrong, is, in my opinion, one of the best fighters in MMA. I think he's skill for skill the best middleweight. But you got outboxed by Robert Whittaker. That guy has an 8-inch reach disadvantage. And you lost to Jan Blachowicz, who was basically as big as Alex Pereira. Shorter reach than Alex Pereira, shorter guy than Alex Pereira, but still Adesanya didn't have the same physical attribute advantages that he would normally have in that fight, and he got outstruck every single round. And so I just want to leave you on this note. The last guy to have a kickboxing fight between these two is Alex Pereira, and that was only last year. The dude had a kickboxing fight last year in 2021. Championship level kickboxing we're talking about. Close fight. A lot of people thought it was a robbery. He didn't win, but close fight. He was already 1 foot out the door into MMA. Isreal Adesanya's last kickboxing fight was against Alex Pereira. This is back in 2016 when he got knocked out. Never did kickboxing again. From 2016 to 2022, Alex Pereira was only improving, only getting better, only preparing to fight the best in the world at kickboxing. No grappling, none of that. And unless you're banking on Isreal Adesanya shooting for takedowns and doing everything that he can to get this fight on the ground, I don't think you can pick him to be the better striker. And you may say, well, MMA striking is different. It is when the stylistic matchup is relevant. It's different when you're fighting a guy like Robert Whittaker who can shoot for a takedown, who can get you down. It's different when you're fighting a Marvin Vettori who's trying to get you down as well. it's not much different when you're fighting another guy who's also predominantly a striker. Isreal Adesanya prides himself on being the world's best striker in MMA, and I just don't really think he's gonna go in there with his wrestling shoes this time. And as I've said earlier, we see guys try to change their game, especially strikers when they try to wrestle. They can gas out a lot quicker. There's a reason why a lot of those guys choose not to do it, is because when they try to change it up and they try to do something that they're not really used to, it doesn't go so well for them. It takes a lot more effort for Isreal Adesanya to secure a takedown on Alex Pereira than it would for a guy like Robert Whittaker. I'm banking on both of these guys standing and trading. And the last time I saw Izzy stand and trade with a guy that was pretty big, with a similar reach, similar height, he lost every single round. All right, he got outstruck. And the last time I saw that one of these guys was fighting in the world of kickboxing, it was Alex Pereira last year. All right, so I don't really get this idea of, it was just a young Izzy. No, it wasn't. You're just not really looking into the fight, right? You're just listening to what the analysts have to say, but they're all kissing Izzy's ass. And Izzy's out here saying, I'm going to turn it into a horror show. This one is personal. By doing what? 5 leg kicks at range? I'll know something that he doesn't. And I'm disappointed in guys like Dan Hardy. You should know the game more than that. You should know the game more than, well, Alex Pereira's game hasn't really changed all that much. Ridiculous. I can't wait for this one, man. I really can't wait. But you know, I just see Isreal Adesanya getting caught. One of his main ways of defending himself is pulling his head back in a straight line. And he'll still get caught when he does that. With left hooks, by the way. He'll get caught with a hook by Robert Whittaker, by Jared Cannonier. And you know what? Those guys don't have the 80-inch reach, 79-inch reach that Alex Pereira has. And sure, you may be able to get out of those punches just enough. But when Alex Pereira can reach a little bit longer, you're going to sleep. I'm picking Alex Pereira by a 2nd or 3rd round KO. We're going to have a new champion. And I can't wait. If you're into bodybuilding and fitness, you probably already know that eating whole foods with little to no processing is good for you. Eating seed oils and processed monstrosities are just going to hinder your progress. And you may be thinking, well, how can I actually bring all of this together? How can I actually make consistent, cheap, and delicious healthy meals for my daily regimen? As someone who's so passionate about nutrition and fitness, I've written a cookbook with dozens of healthy recipes. Each recipe made with whole, unprocessed foods so that you know exactly what you're putting into your body when it's time to eat. In addition, every time I come up with a new, tasty, and healthy recipe, I add it to the cookbook. Every year, I'm basically adding 20 to 30 new recipes to this cookbook, so that if you get the cookbook, you have no excuse but to eat healthy. So check out the Real Food Cookbook. The link is in the description. And as always, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe.